This video is sponsored by Squarespace. You can make your own beautiful website or online store with this all-in-one platform. Hi everyone, so this video I want to show you my favorite Procreate brushes. I get a lot of questions about the brushes I use in my digital painting, and I thought it'd be useful to have just like a video that people can go to and see all the brushes I like and why I like them. Now the iPad I use an iPad for all my digital art. I have the iPad Pro 12.9 inch 3rd generation, and I got this in school. They actually gave us all iPads as part of our tuition, but that's besides the point. The one I used before this was smaller, but this is the one I've been using for many years. And I use Procreate to draw, and I'm going to be showing you all my favorite brushes. This is just a little pencil holder that I got on Amazon that kind of helps me grip the pencil a little bit better, because I find the pencil itself a little too small and it kind of like makes my hand cramp without it. And I also have a matte screen protector that I got from Amazon just to give the screen a little bit more of a tooth. I don't like drawing on the glossy surface. The one downside with the matte screen protector is that it does add a little bit of a rainbowy speckle, very subtle texture visually to the screen, but I'm very used to it and I couldn't really go back to not having a screen protector. I'll be showing you all the brushes that I like and why, and I just have them all in this folder here. I use a lot of other random brushes here and there, but I've listed all of my most used brushes. The first one is the Clean Pencil from the Dina Norland brush pack. I was a bit hesitant to make this video because I use a lot of Dina's brushes and she is no longer with us, unfortunately. But I do think, you know, maybe she can live on through us using her Procreate brushes. So I want to show you my first one I use a lot is the Clean Pencil, and it's just really nice for having like a very thick, dense line with some texture still, and you can do line art with it. I usually use this if I want a solid line art for drawings, and I use it a lot for stickers as well, so I really like that brush. The next one is the Pencil H. I believe these pencils were like based off of the default Procreate brushes, but like modified a little bit. So the Pencil H, I actually really like this one for like doing like textured shading, because it's just really nice to like press lightly and add like texture and shading on top of your painting here and there. Now this one is from the Retro Max pack. It's called the Max U Liner Strong. I don't actually use this brush that much, but I wanted to mention it because it's kind of similar to Clean Pencil, but a little different. It's a little bit rounder. The Clean Pencil is more like squared. But I wanted to mention this brush as well because I noticed it and I was like, I should be using this brush more because it just seems like a nice textured line art. I don't like having brushes that are too like untextured, because I like to make my digital art feel traditional and not be too like, I don't know, like digital looking, too crisp. That's just like my style. The Monoline is a good brush when you need a harsh edge that has like no texture at all, and you can modify it. You can like modify the properties to like increase the maximum size of it so that it's a bigger brush, because some brushes can only go so big, but you can always go into the properties and change this. It's a good starting point for like any harsh edge brushes that you need. And I use it to design like enamel pins and patches and stuff where you can't really have shading. Another brush I really like is the, oh, by the way, Monoline comes with the iPad. I believe it's under like sketching or inking. It's under calligraphy. So the next brush I really like is the Soft Dense Grainy Pencil. This is by the JelArts brush pack. It's called the, I hope I'm saying this properly, the JelArts Pencil Box. And there's a lot of like different pencil textures that are really fun to play with. So I'd recommend this brush pack if you like a like pencil look to your art. But the Soft Dense Grainy Pencil is a go-to for me. I just really like how like soft and grainy it is, and dense, if that makes sense. So that's a good one too. Max Gouache Flow Rough. This is one of my favorite brushes to drop in colors and just to color in general. I love the Retro Max pack. It's my favorite brush pack. I would highly recommend checking out all the Max pack brushes. They're my favorite brush packs that I use all the time, and I've highlighted my favorites here, but I tend to find myself using the Max Gouache Flow Rough here. And a fun thing to do with like painting brushes is to go into the color dynamics and go into stroke color jitter, and you can increase the hue jitter, and this will make each stroke you do a slightly different color from the previous one, and it kind of mimics when you're like mixing paint traditionally and you don't have the exact same color but it's close enough, and it gives it like a nice organic look. And usually I have that turned on for my painting brushes, and I really like this one, and I would just recommend to try out the Max Pack brushes. They might seem expensive, but they're really worth it. He puts a lot of work into his brush packs and the textures are very high quality. Another thing you can do is get his paper pack. I'm actually using a combination of his papers as a background for this video. I've like combined them all together. Not them all, I've combined a couple together as the background, and if you see people with like textured paper backgrounds in their illustrations or as like a sketchbook page, that's probably where they got it from. I like to modify them though, just so they don't look too similar to what other people use. And by modifying them, I'll paint over them with like grain brushes, which I'll get into, or I'll add a bunch of different textures on top of each other and set them to like overlay or multiply until I have something that looks kind of unique. Now we're on Max Gouache Flow Detail. This is a little bit of a less textured brush. You have a little bit more control with it. I really like this one. It's from the Max Pack, the Retro Max Pack, and it's really nice. Then we have the Watercolor Max Pack, which is a really nice brush pack if you want to mimic watercolor digitally. Watercolor Flow Detail. I find these brushes tend to be more transparent because it kind of mimics watercolor, and it shows a lot of paper grain through the brush, which is really nice. It's very realistic, and the watercolor Max Pack comes with so many brushes. There are so many in here. You can even have like a watercolor bloom, so it kind of looks like, oh, they kind of like bled together with another color. It's a really, really cool brush pack. It's so fun to play with. Like, look at that texture. I could recommend every brush in this pack. It's really, really special in my opinion, and I would highly recommend it if you like really textured stuff and you want to mimic watercolor. And you don't even have to do a painting that looks like watercolor with these brushes. They can just add a cool texture to your art. Like, when I use these like gouache brushes or these watercolor brushes, I'm not saying like, I'm gonna make a painting that looks exactly like a gouache painting. It's just like a nice texture to add into my art and to give it a little bit more of an organic feel. But you can totally like approach this as, I'm gonna do a watercolor painting, but digitally. It just really depends on how you wanna use the brushes. I think you can make any nice piece of art with any brush, but these just sort of assist you in like achieving the look you want, and it's really fun. And making your own brushes is really fun too. I really need to do that more. Now for a quick break to thank this video's sponsor, which is Squarespace. Squarespace is an online platform. You can make your own customized website for your brand, your shop. You can make a blog. It can be anything that you want it to be. My favorite way to start designing a website is to choose a template, and they have so many templates to choose from. Once you chose your template, you can change so many things about it, like the fonts and the colors. And I also really like to link all my social media to my website, and Squarespace makes this really easy because once you add your link, they automatically put the icon for the site, and this just helps people be able to find you in different places. Their Fluid Engine editor is a very flexible way to arrange elements on your site. Everything snaps to a grid, so you can be organized, but also have the freedom to drag things around and arrange them how you want. If this sounds interesting to you, head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/JelArts, and you can get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Next, we have Max U Watercolor Detail. This is also in the watercolor brush pack. I like this one because it's a little more dense than the others, and it has a nice little like raw edge, which is pretty cool. So I would highly recommend this as well. Then Max U Pastel Grainy, and it's from the Retro Max Pack. I recently discovered this one, and I love going to the color dynamics and having the stamp color jitter a little bit higher, because I think that's how he had it originally. And this gives the brush a really nice like variation when you use it. Usually I do stroke color jitter, which is like every time you press it down, that'll be a new color, a new color, a new color, ever so slightly. But this one is like the stamp itself, which is like each time you move, like as you're moving your pen, the color changes very, very subtly. So it gives it more of like a textured look. If you can see in there, There's like some oranges and some yellows. Like there's a little bit of variation in color with the stamp, and that's really cool. I don't really experiment with stamp color jitter a lot. I'm gonna actually show you some more like examples of the difference between the two. So I'm gonna go to this brush and increase the stroke color jitter a lot, just so you can see what I'm talking about. It'll be very, very exaggerated. I would usually have it much lower than this, but see how each stroke is a different color? This is like way too exaggerated, but I just wanted to show you. So that's like each stroke, and as you're coloring, it doesn't change, but every time you press it down, it's a slightly different color. Well, not slightly in this case, because I turned it up to like 25%. I usually have it at like 4. So now we're gonna go to stamp color jitter so you can see the difference. So see how as I'm coloring, there's like different colors in the same stroke. And that's what stamp color jitter is. So I think playing with the color dynamics can really make your paintings have a nice like organic feel, as if you like mix the colors yourself. And I'm just gonna reset it back to what I had, put it back to 4. I think a lot of his brushes come with these settings already in them, but if there's something about a brush that you're not liking, you can usually go in and modify the settings. And the brush settings that I like to modify the most are the min-max size under the, I think, properties. Yeah, min-max size, you can control like how big you want the brush to get at its maximum like pressure and how small you want it to get at its maximum pressure. It can kind of help you achieve the thinness and thickness of lines depending on how hard you tend to draw, because this was made like, you know, someone else made this brush with the pressure that they like to apply or the kind of art they like to make. So you can always modify everything in the settings, and I would encourage you to try that out. I also like to change the stabilization. I usually have it up a little bit. When I'm doing line art, I have it up even more. It just kind of helps the lines be a little bit smoother, because digital art, it's very easy to get wobbly lines when your hand, like it really exaggerates any slight wobble that your hand might have, because there's less resistance. You're not drawing on paper. So having stabilizers can kind of help it be a little bit more smoothed out like it would be on paper. And of course the hue jitter, the stamp color jitter, and the stroke jitter, you can play with all that stuff and have some really like interesting results. So yeah, the Max U Pastel Grainy is a brush I love to use to add little like textures into things. It's a brush I recently discovered that I think is like really, really fun to use. The next one is the Max U Overlay Fine Grit, and this can add texture to any part of your painting that you think like might need texture added. It's pretty neat. Just look at that. Look how easy it is to add like texture. You can go over it harder and make certain areas darker. And the thing about this brush is it won't overlap itself. Like the texture is already kind of laid out. Like if you color over one area, it's gonna go over the texture you already laid down, but just darker. So it sort of like traces itself. So if you wanna add like more texture, you can use a different brush to add like extra texture on top. I really love layering different texture brushes on top of each other to achieve certain looks. This is another brush made by Dina, and I just think it's really, really cool to have like, say you're more of like a polished digital artist, like you like more of like the smooth look, but you still want a little bit of texture. This brush is really nice for adding shading, but it has this lovely dotted texture to it, and I just think it's a really, really nice brush. From her brush pack, I would highly recommend that one. The Max U Splatter Opaque, and any of the splatter brushes are nice for adding little pops of color here and there. I actually put it on this canvas, as you can kind of see, and it's like one of my favorite brushes. The texture is like really nice, like they look like little paint splatters, and this is from the Watercolor Max pack. Now we have the Max U Grainy Stipple, and this is from the Painter's Max pack, which is interesting because I don't really use a lot of brushes from that one, but I do really like this one because it's just like a nice, dense, grainy stipple texture you can add that like overlays itself. So you can like layer and layer it, and it's really good for adding texture to random areas. And I have all my brushes sorted between like my sketch brushes, the grain brushes for adding texture, the brushes I use to drop in colors and to shade and color. I don't use all of these, and notice how there's like color block 1. Like I could delete a lot of these. They're just like different thicknesses of the monoline brush that I use to do like very like crisp edges for enamel pin designs and stuff like that, but I'd highly recommend organizing your brushes like this. Okay, well, don't organize it the way that I do because I'm very disorganized, but I do have like folders that help me. Now that I have this like folder made just for this video, this is actually going to be pretty nice to like have all my favorite brushes in one place, which I haven't had for a while, so that's really cool. I wanted to show you like a really, really simple way of like my process. So we're gonna draw a frog real quick. So I'm gonna start by sketching with the pencil H brush. So let's just do like a silly little frog. This is gonna be a doodle, okay? Don't judge me. For the eraser, I like to erase with the brush I'm using or with like a textured brush. I don't like to erase with like a harsh brush. Maybe we can give him like a real frog leg. I'm always trying to push the limits. How like jelly bean shaped can I make the frog? Okay, now we're gonna reduce the opacity and do the line art. I don't always do line art, but I'm gonna do it for this one just so you can see. Okay, that's better. Little spots. And now we have some line art. It looks a little weird because I'm doing it really fast, but you know, maybe he'll also have like, nah, that's fine. Let's give him some nostrils, some little spots on his legs. Okay, now what I like to do is go underneath and get like a textured brush. Why is this screen going dark? We want this to be bright. My screen keeps darkening for some reason. Let's go with the gouache flow rough and get a frog color and color him in. And I don't like to lift the brush too much. I like to kind of keep it all one stroke if possible, because when you lift it, it will overlap itself, but you do get that color jitter, so maybe you want that. You kind of get a feel for how you like to use the brushes. I'm gonna go to the line art and alpha lock it. Go to like a nice like red color. I like to do that. Make my brush big. And then you go to multiply. I don't want red though. I think I want like orange. Yeah, like a nice sepia. Maybe like right there. A little tummy for the frog. Might be a little too. I also like to eyedrop. As I paint, I like to eyedrop the colors that I'm using. It kind of helps blend everything together instead of selecting a new color each time. Maybe we need like some shading in here. I just kind of like let the brush have its texture. When you press lighter, there's a little more texture to it. I'm basically just using the gouache flow rough for this, but I could add like little splatters if I want to add a little more grain to him. I could like go in with the splatter and like do that, you know. Go in with the overlay fine grit, maybe with a light color. Yeah, just to make him look a little more grainy here and there. I want to brighten him. Yeah, maybe we do an overlay layer with some like the flow detail. Go with like a nice yellow color and add some highlights. And go above the line art and go to the soft, dense, grainy pencil and get some light colors for the shines in his eye. And like, I like to go in and eyedrop like some colors and sort of paint to finish off drawings. And to clean things up. And this is very, very messy and quick, but I just want to give you an idea of like how I use all the brushes together. Because I am always like switching brushes, and I like to paint on top of my lines after I've done like most of the base shading. And you can like just have fun with your mark making. Don't be afraid to leave like lines and like brush textures and stuff. And just have fun with it and figure out how you want to use the brushes, if that makes sense. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. This is my little doodle, little little froggy very, very quick. He only has 3 legs for some reason, but I really hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions about the brushes I use or any brush recommendations, feel free to leave them in the comments and I'll link all the brushes I use in the description. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in my next one.